Let's go to our sell highs. Dave, you have a couple of wide receivers who have number one, well, potentially number one for Deebo, wide receivers coming back. And we don't know when, but hopefully soon for McLaurin and Lamb. So you have Deebo Samuel and George Pickens. By the way, before I forget, Darius Slayton not expected to play. We're going to preview that game later. But Dave, you have Deebo Samuel and George Pickens.
It's exactly what you laid out. It's really as simple as that. When McLaurin comes back, I expect the target volume to go down for Deebo Samuel, not to a point where he's going to suck, but where he's not going to be as good as he's been. And the same thing for George Pickens. So these are going to be great number two receivers on their own teams. They'll still be like borderline number two wide receivers for fantasy. Like if you get them now from a desperate manager that needs wide receiver help, the guys that have been struggling through with, think of the names that we've already talked about, T. Higgins, Brian Thomas Jr., the list goes on. They could use receivers like this, and they might buy into them based on what they've done so far. I think we've seen the best, certainly from Deebo. And we'll still see some good games from Pickens because the Cowboys are going to throw a ton. But I bet he'll be more inconsistent once CeeDee Lamb comes back. And we saw that in the first 2 games of the year. He had one great game and he had one terrible game. So if you can get something for these guys, it just makes sense to move them while you can before the number ones on their team come back.
You got to get a lot, though.
You can't give them away. You're not trading one of them straight up for Travion Henderson. But if you can trade one of them straight up for Derrick Henry, I think I'd do that, especially if it's half or non.
Heath?
Non, yes. And I'd probably be more willing to sell Pickens than I would Deebo. But I think I had Deebo ahead of Pickens, so I think it probably just depends on who you liked before the number one wasn't there. I think the Pickens Lamb target share going back is much more certain than the McLaurin Deebo target share going back.
Interesting.
I think both these guys are still heavily involved, even when the guys return, because the Cowboys throw the ball so much.
Agreed.
And you just saw Flournoy have a big game. Like there's a lot of room to eat in this offense, even with Jake Ferguson too. Like they're going to be in a lot of shootouts, and it's not going to be the same heights. So Dave's right. Like you're getting peak value for these guys if you could do it. But I think in the case of like Deebo, for example, he may be the number one right now. Like, McLaurin's never had to deal with a player like this. And Cliff Kingsbury's probably having a lot of fun with a player like this. He only runs 3 routes, so he's doing very well in that regard. But I think in the case of both of these guys, you could see still sustained value because of the type of players that they are and the offenses that they're in. I made a trade, it was somewhat out of desperation. I got lucky to beat Heath without, I didn't, this is how bad it is. I have to fix some of my notifications. I didn't even realize I made the trade. So I made a trade in our Draftathon league. I traded CeeDee Lamb for Deebo Samuel and Quentin Johnston. And I didn't even start Deebo. So that was embarrassing. But I was 1-3, 1-4. What was it last week? 1-3? No, 1-4. Excuse me. No, 1-3, and lost Tyreek Hill and didn't have CeeDee Lamb. So I was desperate for receiver help, and so traded Lamb for those receivers.
Yeah. Well, so I'm doing a poll right now on Twitter. I have a feeling I know how it's going to end, but if both are healthy, who is the better Commanders wide receiver rest of season? And right now, only 31 votes, but 2/3 of them go to Deebo. I think people are going to go with Deebo. That doesn't mean he's not a sell high. But yeah, so Deebo had a 26% target share with Terry McLaurin on the field. It's 31% with him off the field. But yeah, he's doing well, and hopefully they both can be good. I think you said they'd be number 2 wide receivers when their guys are back.
On their own teams and low-end number 2 receivers in fantasy. Deebo more than Pickens.
All right. Heath says Jake Ferguson, kind of on the same subject here, is a sell high. I believe he leads the position in targets. It's either him or McBride. And then there's Emeka Egbuka.
We might as well sell high today, right? Might as well sell the number 1 tight end in fantasy and the number 3 wide receiver in fantasy. Like for Ferguson, I think his target share is going to be more impacted by Lamb because they work more in the same part of the field. The first 2 weeks of the season, Ferguson had a 21% target share. Pickens had a 15% target share. And the general expectation from everybody was that's going to be closer the rest of the way. If we thought George Pickens was going to have a 15% target share when CeeDee Lamb gets back, we wouldn't be saying buy low on him. We'd just be saying you can plan on leaving on somebody else's team. And right now, since Lamb's been out, it's a 27% target share for Ferguson, which is insane for a tight end, and a 21% target share for Pickens. So I think when Lamb comes back, you see that 27% for Ferguson move a larger share than you do the 21% for Pickens. I think Ferguson's probably in that tight end 8 to 10 range when Lamb's back. And right now he's just destroying the position. And what more importantly, maybe you decide which of those two, Pickens or Ferguson, do you think is the sell high? Because they can't both be anywhere close to what they are right now when CeeDee Lamb's back.
But I guess the question would be is like for Ferguson, which tight end are you pivoting to? So like if you think like you can get by with the streaming options and turn Ferguson into Bowers with the idea of Bowers being Bowers, like that's a great trade.
Right. I think that's the ideal trade.
So like that's the type of, and maybe even McBride, the McBride manager might be frustrated and says, okay, let's do something and Ferguson for McBride and something else, again, to sort of get the immediate upgrade of what Ferguson has been. But like, you got to have a pretty good tight end backup option. You got to have pretty good plan B, because I think even if he does take the expected hit, which clearly there's going to be a hit, like he's still probably middle of the pack at worst in the offense that he plays in.
Mason Taylor, Darren Waller.
Well, so here's the thing:
plan Bs.
It's one of
it's
one of two things. I'm trying to do. I think the Bowers thing makes the most sense, because if you have Jake Ferguson, you ought to have a very, very good record. And a lot of teams with Brock Bowers, I can speak from experience, do not. And so that's like the perfect trade, because the Bowers manager doesn't know when he's getting him back and must win now. And Ferguson's the number one tight end this week. If you don't do that, then you're trying to get a really good player at another position and just settle for having a borderline top 12 tight end.
Do you believe we're going to get 2024 Brock Bowers at any point this year?
I would think after the bye at worst.
Well, if you're hoping for close to that, because I don't know if he's even going to get to that. I mean, again, there's a offense change, there's quarterback change, there's a lot of things that happen differently. But let's just say he's close to that. You're hoping that Ferguson gets significantly worse than that.
Right. And I have a hard time buying into. I think Ferguson, I don't think he's going to be
Ferguson. I guess Heath, the question would be is, are you expecting Ferguson to go to sub 10 points?
I would not say sub 10 points. I would expect Ferguson
sub 12.
Yes.
So between 10 and 12 points per game.
Yes.
So that's a huge drop off. So then you're obviously trying to get rid of him.
And I think if he's not, the whole key to this is CeeDee Lamb could come back. Like we're asking, is Brock Bowers going to be himself at any point this year? Is CeeDee Lamb? We're all kind of assuming that CeeDee Lamb is going to be himself. If CeeDee Lamb's himself and Jake Ferguson scoring more than 12 fantasy points per game, I would be selling very quickly on George Pickens.
And I'll just give you not a Ferguson trade scenario, but like in our podcast league. So I'll just, full disclosure, in our podcast league, I have the team I share with Todd Rones. We have Tucker Kraft and Mason Taylor, and we lost Malik Neighbors. So we need receiver help. And I went and looked, and I'm like, there's not a team in that league that I think would give me what I'm looking for Mason Taylor right now.
It's a 14-team league.
That's what I said to you on Sunday, I think, or Monday. I don't remember what it was. I was like, I need a wide receiver 3 so much more than I need a tight end right now in my leagues. Like tight ends, there's enough of them that you just feel comfortable starting.
And I said this to Todd yesterday. I said, we should try and shop Mason Taylor, and he's like, oh, what are we getting in return from at this point? Like the name that he throws, like, are we getting like a Jacoby Myers type of receiver? I said, for what our team needs, Jacoby Myers would make some sense for Mason Taylor. But I think in the case of the Myers manager, like that's hard to give up right now, even though he's struggling.
Okay, the thing about Mason Taylor, and the Jets in general, is they just played the Dolphins and the Cowboys. I think
so I'll change the name. Forget about. I don't want to make some mistake. Tucker Kraft. I don't even know if we could trade Tucker Kraft for what we're looking for and just stick with Taylor.
Yeah. All right. Moving on. By the way, I just think that I think we have to acknowledge the Cowboys are probably the best fantasy team for offense for fantasy. Right. I mean, they have a pretty tough schedule going forward, but they look like Green Bay was going to be a tough matchup. And Dak Prescott scored 30-something fantasy points, so they had a huge game
without CeeDee.
Without CeeDee Lamb, they're just to my surprise the best fantasy offense. So if you're selling high on these guys, it's got to be very high. It's not just they're going to stink. Okay, Jamie, 2 sell highs, please.
I don't remember who I told you.
I think you had Jaylen Waddle on there.
Oh yes.
And you had Stefon Diggs.
In the case of Waddle, look, he's in a great spot right now, clearly, coming off the game that he just had with Tyreek Hill being out for the season. I think he's going to be fantastic. But there's the what if Tua goes down question. What if he gets hurt question. Is this sustainable for him? This is just trying to maximize a guy that you drafted with a mid-round pick, probably as a borderline number 2, maybe a number 3 receiver. And if you could turn that into somebody who's struggling, that may give you some long-term appeal. It's just worth exploring. So
would you trade Waddle for AJ Brown?
I would. Yes.
Yeah, I think I might rather have Waddle.
I wouldn't trade him for Brian Thomas Jr.
I wouldn't trade him for T. Higgins either.
Would you rather have Waddle or Egbuka?
Egbuka.
I don't know about that.
I do. I think he's legit at this point.
You should be able to get Waddle plus. Like, I realized I didn't even talk about Egbuka, but like this is a shoot for the moon scenario. I do not believe he's going to be a top 12 fantasy wide receiver in the second half of the season when Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are both there. And so I wouldn't I wouldn't sell for less than a number 1 wide receiver or a wide receiver 13 and another starter or something like that. But he's currently wide receiver 3 in total fantasy points.
Yeah, Egbuka's doing a lot of his damage on deep balls. He has the second. If we define deep ball as 20 or more air yards, he has the second most deep ball targets behind Tyquan Thornton. He has the most yards and most touchdowns on these targets. That's Emeka Egbuka. But the encouraging thing is Egbuka also has 6 targets at or behind the line of scrimmage, which ranks 10th among wide receivers, same as Justin Jefferson, 1 more than Amon-Ra St. Brown. So they're giving him those easy fantasy points. And also but I just think what's nerve-wracking is that he seems to make his hay once or twice a game on these like deep post routes in the end zone that you just wonder if he can keep that up. But man, he is so damn good. Waddle
He's also still learning the position. Look, I think in the case of Egbuka and Waddle, you're not giving these guys away for nothing. You're giving these guys away for superstars.
Yeah. All right. And then Diggs, he is 3rd in yards per route run behind Jackson Smith-Njigba and Puka Nacua. He doesn't run that many routes yet. Why are we selling Diggs?
Again, just a guy that you're maximizing what his value is right now. Dave said running back is banged up. I mean, receiver has been the worst position in terms of injuries and, guys struggling at the top. Again, can you turn a player that you drafted later than a guy like Waddle, who was sitting on your bench in most cases? I mean, I don't think his start percentage, the last time I looked yesterday, was above 60%. So you can hopefully turn, like, I would trade Diggs in a heartbeat for AJ Brown. I would trade Diggs for T. Higgins at this point. So I think there's some sustainable value here, but we're also talking about a guy still coming back from an ACL tear. While he looks great now, there's still the what if scenario. So maximize the potential while you can.
Here's the question I have on Diggs. Did he have his last 2 games were really good? Did he have those games because one was a matchup against his former team and he wanted revenge, and the other one was fairly easy matchup? He got lined up against the Panthers' second best corner and just shredded him all game long. And now that he's had those 2 big games, does he fall back in? Or is this is he evolving into what we were hoping he would be, which is the number 1 receiver for Drake May, the guy that May leans on all the time, and basically becomes what he was to Josh Allen, when Allen was coming up in Buffalo and needed a big time number one receiver. If you think he's going to end up being the number one guy and that this is who he is now, 8+ targets per game, potential for 100 yards against anybody, then you're not trading him because you won't accept anything that you'll think is fair in exchange. You're sky high on him. But if you think this is kind of flukish and what you've seen over the last couple of weeks, then maybe you do move on from him and see if you can parlay him into a better wide receiver.
Yeah, he's playing about 42% in the slot, which is good. He needs to be in the slot, I think.
Tell me, is that over just 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks? How far back does that go?
That's for the season, but I think that's kind of been the trend. Is it's
right? Like I think he took over for Demario Douglas in the slot, and that's helped unlock him a little bit.
And he's still not running that many routes. Last week, Diggs played about 50% of the snaps. He did have a 64% route participation rate. The week before that, it was 82%. So I thought that we were finally getting to the point where Diggs was close to, a full-time receiver in terms of running the routes, but he wasn't in week 5. The thing is, they have such an easy schedule. I'm going to say it right now. I will take Diggs over T. Higgins. Jamie, the bet is on.
Okay. What's the bet? Jamie will have to agree with every take you make.
We'll go double or nothing on the bet that you still haven't paid up on with the picture behind.
Oh, the picture. I really want to do that actually. It's a fun one. I don't know why I haven't done that. Also, I'll be in town in January. I'll be in Florida for the Miami National Championship game. So I'll just we'll go out to lunch or something when I'm there for that.
Oh, that's a great payoff for the audience.